You are listening to the Enormocast.
Do you remember those halcyon days back in January, when every ray of sunshine felt like a warm hug from a celestial being? Skiing, climbing, we yearned for its caress. But now spring is here, and the tables are about to turn. The sun now stalks us like an enormous toddler with a magnifying glass. The burning orb, the Death Star, call it what you will. Just don't be caught out at noon on some edgy crimp fest, lest your feet swell and your tips shred. But Black Diamond has a way to fight back. My favorite piece of BD apparel, the Alpenglow hoodie. Built with UPF sun protection, pits for movement, and a hood designed to go under or over your helmet, and even some sort of odor control next-gen tech to help with that sour fear stink we all work up on the gnar. Or is that just me? Is that a thing with everybody? Man, do I reek after being scared. But frankly, if you aren't basically living in a Sun hoodie 24/7 in the summertime, you may in fact be an iguana, but at least now your tongue can go from 0 to 60 in 1/100th of a second. So don't just feel the burn, fight the burn. And check out the Alpenglow hoodie and all the great head-to-toe, summer, winter, go up, go down, nighttime, daytime, whatever time gear at blackdiamondequipment.com or your favorite local shop. Do you like compliments? Compliments are good, right? From the outright, straight-to-your-face statements of praise to the knowing look and slight chin jut from your favorite bro at the gym, compliments can turn your frown upside down in an instant. And hands down, of all the gear I peddle on the Enormocast, the item that receives the most out-of-the-blue compliments are the splitter hats from peterwgilroy.com. You know, the ones with the titanium plaques and badges. That's right, titanium on a hat. Peter started making these hats a few years ago and has kept the styles coming with designs inspired by the great mountain ranges of the world. So if you're one of those people with a head and who enjoys random praise from friends and strangers alike, go to peterwgilroy.com and check out the splitter hats and all the wearable art that Peter creates. Even better, receive a discount and help out the Enormocast by entering Enormo at checkout. That's peterwgilroy.com and enter Enormo at checkout.
Listen, where are you playing in town? Are you playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
big
big place, that side of town. That's a big place. You sold it out.
20,000 seats. We really should.
The hell are you doing?
I couldn't sleep. I'm checking the ropes. There was a frayed end on your rope, and I'm cutting it out.
Bad weather. No, later, anytime.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, with support from Maxim Ropes.
And the fine folks at La Sportiva. And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is May 9th, 2021, about 10:30 here in Colorado, and this is episode 219 of the Enormocast, a conversation with Genevive Walker. So, how we doing out there, everybody? How's COVID feeling? It's lightening up a little bit, isn't it? Climbing has remained this activity throughout. I think that we're finally getting the word that you could take your masks off outside, but I think we've known that as climbers for quite a while. And but how's everybody feeling? Feeling like there's a light at the end of the tunnel yet? We're not out of it yet, but it's starting to feel pretty good. And with that in mind, the Lander Climbing Festival, the International Climbing Festival, is happening this summer. They canceled it last year for obvious reasons, like everything else got canceled. But they're going to try to pull it off this year. It's on the 15th of July, I believe, and tickets are on sale at climbersfestival.org. And so I wanted to get a little shout out because I think we're going. We being not just the royal we, but the entourage, at least part of the entourage is headed up there. And I don't really get anything out of talking about the Climbers Festival. They usually give me some free tickets that we don't really use anyway, because we just go to the things that really don't require tickets. I don't usually do anything official up there, and I don't think I will be this year either. Maybe I'll have a table at the trade fair. I don't know. I don't have anything to sell really, but we usually just hang out and talk to people and hand out beers and stickers and stuff. Anywho, going on up there. So if you're ready to go, if you're ready to bust out, if you're feeling a little pent up, maybe this is the year. Maybe the thing will go off like crazy because everybody will be ready to rage, or I don't know, maybe it'll be subdued. Be interesting to find out, but check it out if you're interested. Coming out west to the Lander Climbing Festival. Been going for years. Always a great way for me to connect with you guys. The Lander Climbing Festival people are right in my wheelhouse. So, I usually end up talking to a lot of listeners up there. So, put it on your list. Something to do this summer. Break out. Okay, let's get to the chat with Genevive Walker. I sort of stalk Genevive Walker on the Instagram, as I sometimes do these days, finding out who's out there and what they're doing. And what she had to say intrigued me. And I got in touch, and it took a while to get it done because she's on the road. She is a road climber. She lives in her van now, lived in her Honda Element before that, and is still continuing to do that. So, it was a little bit hard to nail her down to even just to talk online, let alone get face-to-face. And the interview gets pretty serious pretty quickly as we sort of talk about Genevive's role in the climbing community and her role as a sponsored climber of sorts. She's sort of dipping her toe into that world in the last year and what it means and what she's supposed to do. And frankly, the pressures that women get as climbers to kind of represent, and in her case, a woman of color gets to represent her community and in a lot of ways to go out there and be this activist towards changing certain trends in climbing. Yeah, and whether or not she's equipped to do that. I mean, she's living in her van, hand to mouth. And somehow there's this pressure on her to be this great climber as well as this activist, as well as this representative of several different groups. And her feelings kind of figuring out what that all means to her. But the really interesting thing for me was kind of afterwards. I started thinking about this interview quite a bit and the pressures that we are putting on these public figures in climbing to, I don't know, literally change the world. And it seems like a lot. It seems like we're asking a lot, especially as we are also asking them to be athletes and to do the climbing and to live the life. There was a point at which I think sponsorship in climbing, at least when I started, meant that, the climbers who were sponsored were supposed to go out and climb and inspire us to be better climbers. And that was kind of where it started and ended. And now we're heaping all sorts of other stuff on them that I don't know if it's fair. But we had a good chat. I slipped a little bit into old guy advice guy, but Genevive was nice enough to humor me. And the second half, we kind of unwound a little bit and had a little fun talking about living in a van, pooping next to your fiance, stuff like that. So I hope you guys dig this one. There's a complexity to Genevive that I enjoyed interacting with, and I'm looking forward to see what she does as she navigates her way through whatever's next. So let's get to it. A conversation with Genevive Walker. If there's one thing that's held true in climbing for 30 years, it's that you can't kill the damn mythos. That's right. Sportiva's famous Mythos climbing shoe is still as popular as ever after 30 years edging, smearing, and crack climbing worldwide. And to celebrate the start of its dirty 30s, Sportiva is issuing the Mythos 30th Anniversary Edition. Same cult classic design, but built from eco-friendly materials and manufacturing, and with a jaunty color twist. How jaunty? Well, you know how those Euros roll. What also remains is the comfort and performance of this stalwart classic. Comfort and performance, you cry. I call foul, Calouse. But that really is the magic of the Mythos, especially if your quiver needs an all-day shoe that will caress your toes like a trip to the spa. Because let's face it, aggressive shoes are great for the short shots, but it's hard to climb your best on pitch 12 when you feel like somebody pounded your toes flat with a ball-peen hammer. So if you're feeling legendary, then have a look at the 30th Anniversary Mythos and the more subdued flash of the Eco Mythos at Sportiva.com or your favorite local shop. we were just talking about how you had been to Rifle, Colorado, nearby. There should be a little bell because I mentioned Rifle on the Enormocast. And I missed you then, and I knew you were around maybe afterwards. But back then I used to do these face-to-face. And so I was talking about how I would literally stalk people that were in Rifle, like, oh, I've heard that person's out at Rifle. And then I try to get out there and end up belaying next to them like, hey, how you doing? Kind of thing. But I'm excited because this has allowed me to connect to people like you who, maybe won't be coming through it in the future or at least soon enough. So, but we talked a little bit about how I follow people on Instagram to find out where you are. And you mentioned the Instagram has become sort of a public diary. Can you sort of expand on that a little bit? What you mean by that?
Yeah. So for me, like growing up, I always kind of felt like I was kind of living for other people in a way, in the sense of I always wanted to make sure the people around me were happy. And if it meant to compromise my happiness for somebody else's happiness, I thought that was worth it. So I feel like throughout the years growing up, and even up until maybe a couple of years ago, I don't know, I never felt like I was really true with myself in terms of my emotions and just the way I saw the world and I saw myself in the world, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So before moving to Colorado about 2 years ago, I was on the road for a couple of years living in my Honda Element, and I started doing a travel diary just to kind of keep track of like the days, because I remember one guy was an old man working at a Walmart in Utah, and he told me to do this because he said, you're going to experience so many things and you're not going to remember even half of it. So it's nice to just write a sentence down every day about whatever you did. And from that, it kind of turned into just a diary and just kind of me being able to write out my life, really. And not even just like in that moment, I started like talking about writing down things that happened in the past that I never really was ready to talk about. I don't know, talking about my feelings was always kind of hard. It was just easier just to like kind of throw that into like the subconscious in a way. So for me, being able to almost use my Instagram platform as like a public diary is my way of being true to myself and kind of coming to terms with things in my life and being vulnerable, which has always been really hard for me. It's not something that I like practiced in my family. My family's not the type of family to like be emotional, show their emotions on their sleeves. My family was the type of family where we just wanted everything to always seem like everything was okay, even if it wasn't. It's really hard to live like that every single day, year after year. So I think I'm just at the point now, I'm 31, where I'm just ready to kind of come to terms with my issues and the things that I'm dealing with and myself. I don't know. It's nice to know that other people are also kind of going through the same things. It sucks. I wish that nobody else had to deal with the things that I'm dealing with. But at the same time, it is nice to know that I'm not the only one out there. And to be able to share my story and hear other people's stories is like, it's helped me a lot, just to say.
Well, that's awesome, because I think we all vacillate between, social media being the end of the world and being some fun entertainment. And then in some ways it's, it can become some sort of almost therapy or a way to communicate positively with the world. It's all those things. And it's hard to remember that, it can be a bunch of different things to different people, because I think about, someone, I don't know if this was when you're talking about like shutting away your emotions and stuff, you're talking about as a young girl or as a teenager. Is that? Yeah, more like teenagers into college. Yep. Really. Oh, okay. Right. And so, I mean, and social media kind of didn't exist if it was, whatever, we're talking 14 years ago, something like that. And the negative power of it for young women nowadays is kind of astounding as well. So in some ways I'm like, it's refreshing to hear someone, not younger than me, but not like a young one, but still someone who's looking at it with this positive aspect to it and gleaning positivity from it. Would you say that's a general feeling that, it's like something like Instagram and sharing these feelings has been a result positive or a result negative? For me, it's been mostly positive. Yeah. And I feel like if I go back and if I was 14-year-old me now on Instagram, I'm sure there would have been way more negative
negative parts about it. But I think I'm just
Right.
like at the age where, I've experienced a lot and I've learned a lot about myself. And I mean, I still get sucked into it, I still like
Sure.
go through and I'm constantly just swiping and I see all these like great Instagram booties and I'm like, oh, I want an Instagram booty, but it's like, wait, no. I don't need, most of these Instagram booties are not even like real. Like I can't compare my butt to an Instagram butt.
Too many
Yeah.
filters.
So I still go, I still get sucked into it as well.
Okay.
But
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a tricky thing. I'm 50 years old and I'm, I don't know if I go the booty route, but, there's just this kind of like, FOMO I get for sure. And also just realizing that this is, these lives that are being presented on there are the, the very gleaned, curated sort of life. And, I'm smart enough to know that intellectually, but there's still like that it's built to grab you emotionally. So I totally understand that. But it's interesting because this happened a while ago that I saw this post that you did. I sent it to you when you asked me what we might talk about. And it was one of many, let me tell you, one of many posts that, where you don't just mess around on your posts. But this one had everything in it. It was really an interesting post. You talked about personal growth. You talked about positivity. You talked about this idea of imposter syndrome. It just kind of like laid out this whole, I don't know, almost like this whole manifesto, if you will, about your life. And I thought, heck, this is where we're going to go to talk, and if that's okay. But, you at some point in your climbing career, which I think started, 8 or 9 years ago, I think that was in there as well, which we can get into the start or not. But at some point or another, you did decide, as one will, to become either sponsored or professional or a public figure, if you will, which is a kind of a dividing line for people. And I was wondering about that choice, how much of it was just organic, these opportunities started to appear, or if it was, something where you said, I think I can turn this into something bigger than me just being a climber that goes climbing every once in a while.
Honestly, even to this day, like right now, I still don't feel like I'm, I guess, I don't want to say like an athlete. Yeah. It's still hard for me to even say that. If people ask like, what do you do? Or like, what's your thing? I don't ever say I'm an athlete. Like, I don't know. I just like to climb, I just like to travel. This has been my life, climbing and being on the road. This has been my life for the last 3 years. And I never thought almost kind of turn it into a career, I guess, in a way, or have a career come off of this. At 31, I'm still to this day trying to figure out what I want to do career-wise. And I don't know. So when a lot of these opportunities start to come up last year, I just rolled with it. So first, Mountain Hardware approached me, and I was so excited. But I remember even like talking to friends and being like, "This is I don't know why they approached me. Like, there's so many other people out there that are stronger. There are so many people out there that are doing more for the community. I don't know why they wanted me." And I think what I just got out of it was that they were just looking for somebody who's living the life, who's doing what I guess their brand is about, which is just like getting out there, doing the best you can. So that's where like that imposter syndrome comes from. And like I said, to this day, I'm still feeling it. Part of me also just feels like with more of these opportunities coming my way, like I feel like I need to almost like take advantage of these relationships and do more for the community. And I'm not there yet. I guess I'm just trying to figure out the skills that I have and how I can take those skills and turn it into something that's going to like progress the community in a way. And I just feel like even today I talked to a friend, I'm just like so stressed out because I feel like at this point I should have been doing more. I have so many different ideas, but it's really hard to take an idea and turn it into something tangible. And I guess I'm just learning that. I thought it would be easier, but it's not just me. I think everybody, all the creatives out there kind of have to deal with that as well. But that's another part of my imposter syndrome, is just feeling that like I have all these opportunities and people are like waiting for me to like do something with it.
One thing everyone needs to do is focus their energy on one place, which is really hard, right? When there's a billion things you want to try to influence, but what would that look like for you, do you think? I mean, what are your big concerns in terms of like changing the community or, you know, changing people's lives in a sense? I mean, what's out there for you, do you think?
So since I do have my SPI and I've been doing more work with that, I feel like single pitch instructor. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I was like, all right. I don't know, is that a nursing thing?
Like, even years ago, I never thought that I'd be a guide. Like, I never thought that was something I could ever do. And even after going through the course and passing my exam, I still didn't know if it was a route that I wanted to fully take. Mm-hmm. And honestly, up until a couple weeks ago when I got back from my last retreat that I guided in Mexico, was when I really sat down and thought about it and thought like, wait, I have this great skill that I feel like I'm pretty good at. I love teaching. I love being able to get people out and have them experience the outdoors and teach them some skills that they can hopefully use in their own personal life. So I'm hoping, and this is what I'm trying to like figure out, is how I can use that skill to help get more people outside, especially more like underrepresented groups and children. And not to the point where it's just like, hey, I want to bring you outside so you can experience this once. Like, I want to figure out how I tap into these communities and get them out and hopefully like make it more of like a long-term permanent thing. So that's where I'm at right now, is trying to figure out how I can use my skill set to help, which is so freaking hard. Like I said, I have like all these ideas that I like run by with friends, but they're all over the place. Because like there's so many things that are important to me. Like that's really important to me. Figuring out how to make gyms more accessible is another big thing that's really important to me. Another thing too is just spreading this more like body positivity around. As someone who like, I've always had issues with my self-esteem and with my body growing up, and climbing, it got better for a little bit, but around like 16, I started dealing with my own eating disorder with bulimia. And that's something that it started towards like the beginning of high school. I was always kind of heavier. And my mom was so nice. She just told me that, you know, like I'll lose it in high school. Like it's just, you go through puberty and you'll lose it. And I hit high school and nothing happened. So I like took matters into my own hands, lost the weight really fast. And after high school, I entered college, and then I started to climb and realized that like I really, really enjoyed climbing, but it was really hard for me to exert that energy when I wasn't feeding my body with the right nutrients. And a couple like instances happened where I fainted, and it happened once and then it happened again, and it was kind of becoming more frequent to the point where I was like, okay, like I need to either stop doing this to my body or stop climbing pretty much. Like my body can't handle both not getting the nutrients and the energy and trying to work really hard. So in a way, like climbing helped me get over that for a bit. But then I got more deeper into the climbing community and started climbing a lot more. And all my friends turned into climbers, and just kind of being around like such strong, fit people all the time starts to wear on you as well, especially when you already have a lot of like body issues coming into it. So like I looked at me, I was like short. So I like gained some weight back and gained muscle, but like it definitely wasn't a skinny mini. Definitely wasn't tall. I'm like 5'2", so I'm short and stocky. And I wanted to climb better. So then I kind of started dealing with it again, because I thought like, okay, I need to like lose that weight fast. If I can like cut the weight, I'll climb stronger. Worked for a little bit, but again, your body can only handle it for so long. So for me, dealing with this, and especially with it, the conversation coming up more, especially this year with that movie Light that came out, I also kind of want to be part of that movement and part of that conversation, and kind of just like help people, especially newer climbers getting into the sport, to not try to get so fixated on that, because I know I did, and I know a lot of other people did, and like it's not worth it. Like I'm still dealing with a lot of aftermath because of that. climbing's becoming way more popular and more gyms are popping up and more people are becoming serious, you know, more people are really trying to like get stronger and like push their grades. And I think it's really important to not get so fixated on like cutting the weight.
I just think about too and it's on the Enormocast. I'll be honest, like there's definitely this whole culture is around, improving and climbing harder. And, there's every once in a while this kind of like lip service to the soul climber and just, but it still gets so wrapped up in performance. The way we talk about climbing, the way we praise those who climb super hard and all those sorts of things. I think that, I don't know if that's like worth attempting to change, but you do have to have this bulwark in the background against these ways in which people are going to try to achieve what the media is sort of telling them to achieve, which one way is to cut weight, which again, is sort of a temporary fix. But yeah, I can see how it would like leak into someone's brain that this is absolutely necessary. Not only is it necessary, but I think that's what everybody else is doing. Like I think there would be a group kind of consciousness, even if they're not. You're just going to, if you have that in your head, you're going to assume that, well, that's what's necessary. That's what's always been happening. And it kind of has in some circles,
Yeah. I mean, I'm always constantly, I feel like I'm always surrounded by these like tall, lean, like athletes that are just like crushing so hard. And like, I hit.
You could come hang out with us, me and my friends here. We don't look like that.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, look at all these dads. Like I got way more going on than they do.
You guys probably crush so hard. And it's great when I see that because it's like, I don't need to strive for this thing that's unattainable. Like I'm never going to be tall. There's no way. Mm-hmm. And my body's just not built that way. I'm always going to be kind of curvy. And it's weird. I'm an extra small and everything, right? But I still see myself as this like huge person. I call myself stocky because I can't call myself fat.
Right.
But stocky is like my way of saying
sure.
it,
Yeah, and it's interesting and I will not tread into a man commenting on a woman's body. But, obviously you're not tall. Okay, that's not something we can like dance around. I think you said you're 5'2", so and I don't know because I only see pictures of you and it's hard to tell, but there's no way I would ever have looked at you and said either one of those other words. So, and I understand that that's part of, it's part of self-image and it's part of what influences disordered eating and things like that. But as maybe a slightly bit of positive influence, it's like not many people or women are out there thinking like, oh God, that girl's like way too big for this sport or something like that. So, hopefully you can kind of continue to internalize those messages because I understand that it's not a place that's easily mended just by a few nice words about somebody,
Yeah. I think it was yesterday I posted a photo that my fiance took of me. I posted it because what I was trying to say was I usually don't let him take photos of me. I'm just saying because I do not like what I look like in photos. I always tell people I think that I look better in real life than I do through a photo. So I would never let him take photos of me. But this one photo that he took of me the other day was one that I actually really liked. I decided to post it and tell people this because it's not common that I look at myself in a photo and think like, damn, I look good. So for me to actually like see a photo of myself and think that, I felt like was a huge step in like my self growth. Now it's just something I wanted to share with other people and let you know that like, hey, like we need to celebrate these moments in our lives, So
yeah, and it's an interesting place for me to comment on as who I am and also as a man, and also the empathy thing. It's just not something I've ever struggled with. But that brings me back to like what you have struggled with and talking about how you could help other people. I think, with the film Light, Carolyn's had her experiences with it. And I think that when you're talking to people who either are in denial about it or hiding it or, whatever else it happens to be, like having someone who's there that can be like, listen, here's my story, is a powerful thing. It's an extremely powerful thing. And it would put you in a position to probably have a stronger influence than a lot of other women.
I want to help and be an influence in some way. And again, that's also why I've just been like stressing out so much lately. It's just figuring out like what I can do So I'm like also working on that as well. Again, it all goes back to this also imposter syndrome, you know, it's like, I feel like people are like waiting for me to do something right now. And it's like, and you're right. It does take time. And I'm slowly realizing that. But it's still hard. I don't want to be a failure to like any of these brands and companies that I'm with. I don't want to be a failure to the community. I'm very outspoken. I tell people exactly how I feel. So I feel like sometimes people in the community are like, okay, now what? You know, like you've said all these things, but like now it's your turn to do something about it.
You know, the pressure on sponsored athletes, sponsored climbers. I mean, I've dealt with this on the Enormocast a lot. Like the whole idea that you have to be the best climber to be a good representative for a company that's a totally disconnected. I mean, it can be connected, but it doesn't have to be. But I understand how people get into these positions of like, well, now what? Like they're giving me this stuff and I'm supposed to be out there doing what exactly for this company, you know? And a lot of times they don't define it very well for you. You know, go out and do what you do, or like, do you know what I mean? Like it can be really tricky, but the important thing is that aside from that, to me, you do what feels right to you. And if it feels right to you and for some strange reason, Mountain Hardwear is like, no, that's not what we wanted. I mean, that's just not going to happen. It's just funny because it's like, I've been through it myself and it's like, well, what do they want of me? You know, like, and even with this podcast, like, what do they want of me? And it's like, no, what they want you to do is do what feels right to you. And I would hope that as you figure that out, it'll just become apparent to you, you know? And the first step is that you're being a positive representative for these issues that you're talking about. You are right now. I mean, remember, we're talking to a bunch of people right now. It's not just us.
Well, yeah, I know. And it was also kind of weird. Like, I even talked to my fiance like 5 minutes before coming on here. I'm like, I don't know why he wanted to talk to me. Like, I don't understand. Like, he could talk to anybody. And I'm like freaking out down there. I'm like, give me a beer. Cause like, I'm just like freaking out. Like,
I've been pursuing you through borders for like 3 months now?
I know, this has been crazy lately.
No, it's super fun. I mean, I'm in this like, oh, give her advice mode, which is terrible. And like, again, we're like, oh, he's like a guy, you know, 50-year-old white guy giving this young climber advice. Like, I've run into this before. I know when people are like, and I knew tapping on the computer to you on emails, like, you know, she's a little bit wondering what this is all about. But it's like, you represent a generation of climbers that are so much more aware of all of these things that we're talking about culturally within the sport. It's like, it's something like when I was like 31, I would go earlier than that. But when I started climbing in my mid-20s, like none of these things were at all on anybody's radar about a cultural inclusion in climbing, who had disordered eating. Like, it just didn't exist. And I think there's so much pressure on you guys now. If you do choose again to become a public figure, it's mind-boggling actually. And I'm sitting here listening to you talk about the pressures. Like, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's breaking my heart, but I'm just like, gosh, it's so much pressure to do, you know, like you're thinking, you're like, I'm supposed to change the world somehow as a rock climber. Just to say that out loud is sort of absurd, and yet there is that pressure. So I understand where you're coming from. I hope that it's not something that, you know, gets as far as to take the joy out of climbing for you. But would that be something that you would be worried about in terms of like this pressure that you're feeling or the stress that you're feeling around these things? No,
I don't think it'll ever take the joy out of climbing for me. I mean, this is like my biggest passion in life is climbing. Mm-hmm. And it's not even, honestly, it's not even the act of climbing. I love climbing. I like had this conversation the other night with a friend. We were out bouldering and chat one night. And I just remember being like, if it wasn't for the group of friends I'm with right now, like I wouldn't be here. I would have left hours ago if it was just me and my fiance. Like climbing's fun, but it's like having my community and my friends and everybody around that like makes me want to do this day after day, after week, year after year. So I'm never gonna lose that love. It's also like kind of my way to escape in a way. I just feel like there's always so much running through my head climbing's the one thing where like my mind is silent and I'm solely focused on the present, like the next move. So if I didn't have climbing, like I might kind of go crazy. So I guess that's kind of unhealthy in a way, maybe. Like, but that's where I'm at right now.
So many people express that same value about climbing, of this, getting away from it, like clearing my head, allowing me to not be stressed. And that's why it's kind of interesting to me that in some ways, like you've put this stressor on it in a way that and again, choosing to become this sort of public figure, you've invited this little bit of like a stressor into your world, and it needs to obviously be worked out.
Yeah, especially within the last couple of months, I guess like being more vocal in the community and becoming more known in a way. And I'm still on the road. I'm still traveling 24/7. I'll like go to like a new area or be hanging out with people I just met. It's happening more often now where my friends or acquaintances that I'm meeting are like bringing up these like topics about like race and especially like offensive root names and things like that. And they like look at me and they're like, hey, so like, what do you think? And I feel like I'm always being like almost interviewed in a way. And I'm like seen as like the person who's supposed to be the voice for the Black community. And it's like, when it's coming from a friend that I know, I'm somewhat grateful that like they feel comfortable enough, like, coming to me if they want to like really learn. But sometimes it just feels like I'm just like being put on the spot. It's like, oh, you're always so vocal online. Like, why can't we like have this conversation now? And it's like, sometimes I just don't, like, I'm 3 beers deep. This is not the time that I want to like have this like in-depth conversation because it gets me really upset. And I do get angry really fast sometimes. And like, this is not the time to be having this conversation, or like, right. And it's hard when that does happen. And you always have somebody who doesn't agree and they make that view vocal as well. And then that's when I just have to remove myself. So those moments are sometimes where like, God, I wish I wasn't like in this like climbing context right now. I just kind of want to like be my van or tent or whatever and just get away. But luckily that doesn't happen as often. Most of the time it's like really great experiences with my friends outside and just doing our thing. But it's times like that where I just feel like I'm sometimes being put on the spot to like provide, I guess, information.
Right. I mean, it's something that has been in my head for 6 months, at least, is this idea of that someone like yourself doesn't get to necessarily choose that role. It's sort of forced upon you. And I think that, what I just said about modern climbers in general, at least public climbers, athletes, having a lot more pressure on them to do things outside of climbing. That's coming from all directions to everybody. But I think that women are sort of the first tier of getting more pressure to represent, to say the right things, to be this role model in a way that I think guys aren't necessarily getting that pressure. And then I think that, all the people of color that are entering climbing and getting a little bit of recognition are getting that extra pressure on top of them right now. And I wondered about that. My exact thought, I'm like, God, I wonder if that woman or that guy just, doesn't want that role all the time, and whether they feel it or all the time or those sorts of things. I mean, even with this podcast, like, I'm not going to come on here and just be like, so let's get into this whole thing, like it's an important thing that we talk to each other like climbers first,
Yeah. And I guess that's another issue or topic in a way that I wanted to make known was, I feel like, especially last year with the BLM movement, a lot more companies, were seeking out people of color to like add to their teams, the athletes, ambassador teams, whatever the team it is. And you know what? Like, yeah, I wanted to make sure I like took advantage of the opportunities, but I also didn't want to be seen as useful just because of the color of my skin. I want people to know like, hey, like I also have other great qualities and skills that I can offer beyond that. And I want people to recognize that, like I don't just want to be talking about these issues. These issues are very important, but there's also other issues that are also important to me. And I feel like I should have the ability or even like the platform to speak about those.
Well, look, the complexity of it is the issue. And like, you know, we've started this all talking about how you feel like, oh, I got to get on board with, you know, making my changes and making, but what everybody forgets that is putting pressure on someone to do that or your own is that we all have our own problems to work out in a lot of ways first, right? You're just a person like all other people, and you've had these things in your past, the disordered eating, and you may not be in a place yet to help other people quite yet, but you're 31 and you have a long life ahead of you. But you know, it's like everybody forgets that whatever problems you have, that person could also have them and has a whole world in their head that they're sort of dealing with. So I think all I'm saying is like I think we just all like need to give people space. And I've been using this word now recently, right? These safe spaces to not just be Black or to be a woman or whatever, but to be themselves, you know, to be whoever they are for a bit, and understanding that they're, you know, this complex person that may have a past that they're still taking care of at this moment. You know what I mean? And to sort of like attack them about some part of the BLM movement you disagree with or something is just not fair, and it's not human, and find it really daunting, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about it now is it's kind of motivating me to also want to do more. If you ask me, like, you know, what I wanted to do 2 years ago, I would have said, like, I don't know. I just want to go to Mexico in like 2 months. That's what I'm like psyched on. So it's been a good way for me to like really start to grow into myself and figure out like who I really am and who I want to be for myself and for my community.
So let me ask you this. You said you just did a clinic down in El Patro, Chico, which I was jealous of. And what kind of stuff are you doing down there? What does this look like? This thing that you're doing? Because this wasn't the first one.
No,
was it?
This was my third. It's through a company called Space Below Your Feet, based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. We do a ladies retreat, so it's just a bunch of ladies from. You don't have to even have experience really with climbing. This trip, we had one lady who has never climbed outside. She's only ever climbed indoors. So this was her first experience outside. So it was great. And then we had a couple ladies who already know how to lead climb and just wanted to get out and like push themselves with their grades. So it was great to have such like a wide range of abilities and experiences. This retreat, we also had a yoga portion as well, so it was a climbing and yoga retreat, and it's just great. We get up, they did yoga in the morning, we go and have breakfast, go out for like a half day, take like a nice break around noon. Some people go to the pool, we just like hang out, do another yoga session, go back out for another half day of climbing, and then come back and all eat amazing food, sometimes have some margaritas and some beers.
Well, let me ask you this, and this is sort of a trick question, but were any of these women disappointed in how hard you climbed or your climbing abilities?
No, I don't ever talk about that at all. No.
I mean, that's the whole point, right? It's like you have these other things to offer, and that sounds like a really great trip. And I think these women-only trips, which are a little bit new to climbing, you know, I guide with Steph Davis for a crack clinic that she does in the spring and fall. But she also does a women's clinic. And I'm not at all skeptical about the power of those things. It's a really interesting effect to have women grouped together without dudes around. Again, like maybe without this audience kind of feel that you get at crags and things like that. It's a powerful thing that I'm completely on board with. You know, so when I knew you were doing that, I was like already like, well, she is doing something. This is something that's important, you know, even if it's a paid gig, you know, it's like whatever. It's still part of who you are and what you're putting out there in the world. And it's training you for future uses of those skills, you know, yeah. So it's like it's out there. It's happening. What you're talking about is happening.
It was very interesting when you also mentioned that, you know, it's a paid thing, because for a while too, I kind of wrestled with the whole money thing, in terms of like asking to get paid, I guess, really is what it came down to. It's really hard for me to say no to things. I'm one of those yes people that just say yes to everything.
Right.
And then I have way too much on my plate. And then I end up just doing a lot of things for free because I feel like, okay, if it's going to like help the community out, help somebody else out, like, again, I always want to like make sure other people are doing good and doing okay. So I'm always there to like help other people. But at the end of the day, it's like, I also need my bills paid. Like I also have bills. So it's hard because one of the reasons why I didn't think I wanted to like really go down the guide route that much is because of the pay. The pay isn't that good. Like at the time when I was going to be guiding more, I was actually making more as a waitress than I would have as a guide. And it's hard because it's like, I want to do it because this is something I love doing. I love teaching. I love getting people outside. But like at the end of the day, I'm also like 31 years old and I don't want to be living like a college student anymore. You know, like how long can I go doing things for like the love or the passion of climbing before I just can't anymore, you know? And that's another reason why I didn't want to guide in the beginning was because I thought maybe that was what was going to make me lose my love of climbing, was just like always being outside everybody else, but not getting anything besides like, not really getting much in return. Like, you know, I also have to look out for myself. And that was really hard for me to learn. So yeah, it was just really interesting.
No, guiding is a dangerous game in terms of that. You know, that's a dangerous, you know, you take what you love and you turn it into work. It becomes work and maybe not what you love anymore. And that, I mean, every guide, I was a guide. I guided for 7 years, you know, and I burnt the hell out, you know, and it's like every guide talks about the balance and some just push on through and it's what they love and it's their calling. But the whole, you know, I'm going to guide because I love climbing is kind of a tricky proposition for sure, which we've talked about here on the show before. But or you know, it's like, you know, there's other rewards. It's like you got paid, but you also got to go to Mexico, you know, and be on this trip. And you know, and again, those maybe you're supposed to talk about all the giving and all the improvement you're making in these people's lives, but you know, it's okay to be motivated in multiple ways, you know, when the end result is that, you know, the clients had this amazing time. You know, no one expects you to do that for free, I don't think. But I mean, it feels like free in the end anyway, because, you know, you spent all the money you were supposed to make, like on margaritas or whatever.
I know. I like got there and I was supposed to leave on a Thursday and I ended up extending my trip for like another couple of days because I'm like, I'm already out here. I might as well. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's what happens. It's almost like the waitress, like the server life in a way. You work all night and then you spend all your money on beer afterwards at the bar that you work at. So
right, yeah, that's the truth, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, it seems pretty healthy, but it seems like you're wandering around trying to figure it out, and it's all pretty new to you. It's all pretty new to you.
I thought by now at 31 I'd be in a career for at least 5 years and own a house. Just go down that like typical trajectory that you see yourself going down at like 21. And yeah, things just kind of happened. I graduated with my bachelor's in New York and moved to New Hampshire to go back to school. I was supposed to start a grad program. I actually started one in New York and got out of it because I wasn't really feeling it and thought I'd like redo it again in New Hampshire. But I moved to Rumney, New Hampshire, which if anybody knows is like really good climbing, like really, really good climbing up in New Hampshire. And I moved right down the street, which didn't really help. So I ended up not going back to school and just like climbing even more. And one thing led to another. I like met a friend who was living in a car in the parking lot and she ended up becoming my best friend. And she kind of like almost like guided me down this path of like becoming independent, because I was that type of person who just went from like relationship to relationship. I really didn't know how to like live on my own. And she kind of helped guide me in a way. Like I didn't really have like a strong female present in my life like that, who was just like living life the way she wanted to live it. And I was like, this is great. Like I think I could kind of do this. So I like bought my element and moved into my car and hit the road. And then here I am talking to you.
Well, it's so wild because it's like you're telling this story that, if framed, I don't know, in a slightly different way would be this, and or is, but this incredible like free spirit. She's, this free spirit that just, did whatever she wanted, and let's all admire that. But it sounds like you have this kind of like sort of background noise of like, well, shouldn't I be doing more? Shouldn't I be doing more? And I think a lot of climbers deal with that. And I did to a certain extent. By the time I was 31, I had become a high school teacher, which didn't last. But it was that same thing. I was like 27, 28, and I'm like, what am I going to do, kind of a thing, and went back to school and got my teaching certificate. So, it's like we all deal with it, but it's sort of a framing issue with what it means to each person. And I can't imagine that you sort of regret it all.
No, I definitely don't. I mean, I guess the only thing I regret is like my dad worked really hard to give me and my siblings a like really good life, the best life we could have. Like, looking back, I definitely took it for granted growing up, which I think we all do as kids. But now, like looking back, I really see how much him and my mom both gave up for us to like try to make sure that we were on the right path, quote unquote. So I almost feel like there is like a part of me that I need to do it for him, like I want him to like look back and be proud of me. And for a long time, he was not. Everything I've done, like my first tattoo is like way below my like hip, because I knew that he would be so disappointed if he found out that his little girl got a tattoo at 18 years old, let alone it being like a stick figure with some weird, crazy things.
Right.
Like I did so many things that I tried to like hide from him because I just didn't think he was ever going to accept my different life. Me moving into my car, I didn't even tell them. I don't tell them a lot of things. They just kind of figure out. That's just how me and my relationship with my parents work. I never sit and I'm like, hey, I'm moving into my car next week. It's more like I'm going to move into my car. And eventually, like 3 months down the road, they're going to realize that I'm living in my car by just like...
They're going to figure it out. Like there'll be some clues here and there.
Yeah, and he was just like not accepting of, me traveling and like working as a waitress for like 6 years and just kind of doing that. And, and I got the chance to travel a lot and like go to different countries. And he still didn't care because at the end of the day, every time we talk, he'd be like, when are you going back to grad school? Like, you got to think about getting a house and really like saving up. And it wasn't honestly until I got on the cover of Scent that my dad was like, okay, like I see you're doing stuff, like I'll lay off just a little bit.
What's so awesome about that is it's a total generational thing, because I'm older than you, so my parents are older than you, but still like that's exactly what I did. Is anytime I got a mention in what was the only outlet for climbing media then was Climbing Magazine or Rock and Ice, that thing went in the mail and went straight to my parents. Like, because it's a magazine and they don't know that it's just like this like half-ass, tiny little magazine that's run out of an office by like 3 people. But it was a magazine, so it means something, Like,
yep.
That's so awesome. It's so funny because it's just like, Scent, like this tiny little low circ mag, but he's like, okay, this Time magazine, a Scent, they must be about the same thing.
I know, he had like 3
person of the year.
Yeah, he just wanted to like tell all of his like friends at work and like have like all, and I get it, and I'm like, great, if that's what it takes for you to like kind of accept me more, I'll take it. Like, yeah. And
my parents still have a stack of magazines that I was in. Like they're in my house, or they're in their house somewhere. Like, because they, it was like this one line where it was like, so-and-so and Chris Kalous did this thing, and it's like, there it is, it's in this magazine. Here, keep it.
Yeah.
So,
I have like
awesome.
a photo because I really like ping pong, and I like went to some like ping pong tournament when I was young.
Oh, wait a second.
Yeah, and they like got into the paper for it, and my dad like took it like cut it out, laminated it, still have it to this day. And he'd always be like, you really should have tried to go pro with that. And I'm like, it was some like local ping pong champions. Like, there's no way, Dad, I would. Like, seriously, it's like things like that. He's like, if there's any way to make like big bucks off of it, he's like, you should just go for that.
Like climbing's a waste of time, but professional women's ping pong, That really could have made it.
I even told him about this, and he was like, after you get done, maybe you should have your own podcast. And I was like, Dad, this is not. I don't want to. No, I really don't.
I was gonna make a joke that this was gonna smooth it all over with him. I'll give him a call. That's really funny. I love it because it's like I said, it's still a lasting generational thing, and it won't last again. The next we will not do that with our kids. Like, oh, climbing magazine, yeah. I don't know. Are you keeping your grades up?
Yeah.
But it's funny that you went into that sort of tangent about your family, because that's a standard Enormocast question. Really, is because I'm always curious, and I think again, the pressure on women to sort of live a normal, whatever prescribed societal life has always been bigger than guys. Guys, even 100 years ago, where it's like, yeah, you go out and do this thing, but you, lady, go and, have a family and all that sort of thing. We all know that. So it's always a question I have when I start to get that hint of a family, tension around someone's choices, because living in your car, it seems romantic to climbers. It doesn't seem romantic to anybody else in the world, No. Yeah, it's funny. It's a funny thing, and we joke about it and even sort of get a little offensive about it, calling it homelessness or whatever, which is inappropriate. But we're the only ones who romanticize it. And the fact that you had an element can even be romanticized into at least you weren't in a Camry or whatever, it's like.
Yeah, no, there's a whole
it's funny,
club, an element club. I feel like, you see somebody else with an element, and then you always check to see if they have back seats, and you hope that they don't, because then you're not using that element to its full potential.
Right.
All of our siblings are 9 years apart. So my older sister did the family thing. My younger brother is doing the career thing, and I'm just the weird middle child, just rebelling.
So what'd you say your siblings are how
9
far apart?
years. We're all 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
So wait, they had 3 kids over 18 years? Holy cow. All right, that's a little odd.
There's a lot.
Okay.
We were so yeah, like I said, my sister did the family thing with 2 kids. My dad was hoping I was gonna go down the more career path, which I didn't. So my little brother's a correctional officer in a jail right now, which is insane. I don't know how he's doing it at 22 years old. That's insane. But
that sounds really tough, actually.
Yeah.
So what are their input to your lifestyle? Are they interested in it or
Yeah, my sister, me and my sister, all my siblings get along pretty well, but my sister and I had many conversations, and she wishes she could do more, but it's hard when you have 2 kids.
Right.
And you work full time, but she loves it. We always talk about trying to do a trip together, and my little brother and I butted heads, I feel for a while before he graduated. He didn't really, I feel accepted my life. But recently, now that he's working, and he's working with a bunch of compared to him, his age, a lot of really old dudes, and they're all white dudes. They're in a jail. So there's just a lot of different personalities that come along with that type of work. And he deals.
That's a nice way to put that.
He deals with a lot, and I have to hear his stories, and I just feel bad because I'm you don't get to be 22. You're an adult, but you're still young. And my dad was a cop, so I kind of in a way feel he's just kind of following my dad's, I guess, life in a way. And I feel we're almost 2 extremes, right? My little brother is going down that extreme, and I'm on the opposite end of the extreme, where I'm just kind of in his eyes, just living life all willy nilly, and everything's all unicorns, but it's not. So,
but it kind of is compared to being a correctional officer.
But he also has way more money in his bank account than me. Just bought a new car, is able to get a house. I can't afford any of those things. I'm just trying to figure out how to plan a wedding, and I stressed out today because I was I don't even want to put down a couple $1,000s for a venue for people. I think that's crazy. I worked so hard to make that money. I don't want to spend it in 8 hours. So but for him, he's sure, I'll just make it rain.
Right.
So it's really it's difficult sometimes, but I think at the end of the day, everybody is finally coming to terms with the way I'm living my life and realizing like it's still in the back of my head. It's not like I'm not thinking about all these things. I still want a career and I want to be able to, own a home someday. So I'm not like a complete lost cause.
I mean, you keep talking about this fiance. So, I mean, that's a change in your life. And soon I think you'll have to make all these decisions as a couple, right? I mean, you can't just go do whatever you want anymore. So, you know what I mean? It's like there are changes afoot.
Oh, it's happened.
Will,
I went from being able to live in my car. So like when I first met him, I was still living in my car and he was living in Boulder, and I would still go off like doing my trips and he would get some FOMO. So then he took a trip with me in my car and like really liked the idea of kind of like living on the road for a bit. So we decided to get a van together and do it together. So we've been in it for actually a little over a year now. And it's still hard for me sometimes because sometimes like I just want to go somewhere else or like do my own thing. And it's hard when you have to run everything by your partner. Or even just like we get along very, very well. But more recently now, I'm like really starting to appreciate like the little bit of time I do have by myself because I'm realizing we spend 24/7 together. I mean, we poop next to each other in the van. Like we do everything together. And I've always loved it up until maybe like just recently where it's like when I went to Mexico, like having the extra couple days to go to El Salto and kind of do my own thing was so nice. I just haven't had that in a while. So it's a change for sure. And I'm still getting used to it. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't be able to do this, I don't think, with anybody else.
Well, no, the van life couple thing is, I haven't done it, so I don't know. But it feels like, gosh, that's intense. That is super intense. And I people have told me that, it's like the Smileys, Mark and Janelle Smiley did, they did like some serious van time, and they all have the same sorts of stories of just like there was times where they were basically gonna gut each other at one if there had been some sort of weapon handy, it's like hide all that sort of stuff. So it's not again, it's so romanticized, but and the van lifers love to take the sunrise pictures of them laying in their snoozy little bed or whatever, but we know that's complete horseshit, about 92% of the time or
100%. So. I tried. I remember we were like in the Utah hills and he was just like taking some photos of the van and like the sunset. And I was like, ooh, I want the typical like butt shot photo, me like laying in a bed and my butt cheeks out. Right. And we tried it and it did not work at all. I was like, I'm not meant for this. Like, this is so lame. I can't believe people actually do this and post this shit. Like, it's so bad. But I will say the one great thing that which has really helped our relationship is like when we do fight, we have to like settle it because there's nowhere for either of us to go. We only have the van. Usually I would get in my car and like go somewhere and we can't. So it is nice that we feel like we have to like talk through things right then and there and resolve them. Or at least just be like, you know what? This is something we're going to save for the morning. But like we can't go to bed. Right. I don't want to go to bed wanting to kill you.
This close together. In this tiny little bed.
We're a little full. We don't even have
we can't even like roll away from each other very far.
No. When we built it, he didn't take into account that like your head and your feet don't fully like that, like you put your head in a pillow. So there's a couple inches. So he literally made it too small. So he has to kind of like sleep diagonal. It takes up my space. And I'm like, dude, this isn't going to happen.
He's like, you're 5'2". What are you worried about? Well, it's funny you said that because Janelle Smiley, again, I don't know if you know those names, but they're from the Tetons and Guides and stuff. And she actually told that exact story of getting super pissed and like slamming the door on the van and like walking away and then realizing like it's like raining or snowing out and I can't, and like had to just like creep back into the van and just sit in the front like face the other way was like as far as she could like get away from.
Yeah, that's about it. That's about it.
Yeah, the romance. That's you need to do like a whole separate Instagram where you just do real van life, and it's just like shots of bedhead and like you guys pooping next to each other.
And like my shiwi coming off.
I think that would actually
just, like,
blow
peel
up
over the floor because it happens way too often. Like, it's bad. It's really bad. We have this like poop smell that we can't get out of the van because we have a pooper. We empty the pooper and it still smells like poop. And I keep being like, Scott, did you fart? And he's like, no, I didn't fart. I'm like, what is this smell? And we can't figure out if it's coming from our mini fridge or if there's just like a poop particle just like floating around
somewhere. See, this is, if that doesn't exist, if that Instagram doesn't exist, you have to jump on this because it will blow the fuck up. That will be humongous. If the real van life, like, and not faked, like not like, oh, let's parody van life, but like this is actually things that are happening to us every single day would be amazing. So I want in on that. This was recorded, so I want a little bit of that action when it happens because that's. I can't. I mean, I would dump all the van life things just for that one for sure. Yeah. So anyway, think about it. When you find the poop stain, take a picture. I can't.
It's been like 2 days and it still smells, and I just don't know where it's coming from. And I can't. I don't know. I'm so. I cleaned everything. I still can't find the smell. I'm like, maybe something's dead in the hood of our car and it's like coming through the vents. But it smells like poo. It doesn't even smell like something's dead. It literally just smells like a turd. I don't know. When I figure it out, I'll let you know.
Okay. Oh, please. I have a 4-year-old. I deal with plenty of poop. Maybe I could come and consult. Be like, oh, I know exactly what that is.
No, poop sultans. Yeah.
Anyway, well, awesome. I don't know if we have anything to top that. Again, this one sort of, I mean, we have this generational difference with us, and hopefully I didn't get on the whole advice train a little bit too much, but it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. And, I think that you're putting great stuff out in the world. Being a role model is not, without its own merits. And I think you're doing that perfectly on Instagram and wherever else you can do it. So I hope you keep it up, and I hope you keep this love for the road and for climbing alive as long as you can.
Yeah, I don't see it changing anytime soon. So, I mean, I've been doing it. This will be almost going on, I think, like 4 years for me. And this is like year 1.5 for Scott. So Scott's psyched. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to maybe like have a house so I can have, my like kitchen gadgets. And he's like, nah, I want another couple of years. So I think we're going to be in this for a while.
Awesome. Well, it's an inspiration to us sedentary dads anyway, kind of reliving our old life. So, being an inspiration and that sort of thing has its own merit. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully like people just know that, I sometimes don't know any more than you. So like, please don't think that I'm just going to be like this person with all the knowledge. I grew up in the same school system as you, and I'm like almost having to like, relearn history in a way. I'm learning just as much as you. So just because I'm a role model doesn't mean that like I'm perfect. By all means, I'm like the farthest from. Like I make just as many mistakes as anybody else. But I'm just trying to learn from it,
All right, folks. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Genevieve for sitting down. I managed to somehow get a mic sent to a place that she was going to pass through. I had to like airdrop it with a parachute into someone's chimney, essentially, not her house, because she doesn't have a house. But anyway, we got it done, and I appreciate that. And since then, we've exchanged a couple laughs over some van life photos where the dawn glow is perfect and men and women are waking up just clothed enough to get past the Instagram censors, perfectly coiffed, everything in its place, which, as we know from camping anywhere in a van, that's not how it works at all. It's all dank in the van. You guys have been like breathing all night in this tiny space, so somebody's like gagging and trying to get a window open to get a little bit of air in there. Yeah, you haven't taken a shower in a few days. Great. So hopefully Genevieve will be inspired to start that Real Van Life Instagram feed, because I'm there for that all day. Hope your van life is going well, even if it's just a weekend van life, and even if your van life occurs in a 98 Civic. I don't care how you get to the climbing. Just go climbing, have a lot of fun, be safe, and check your knots. All of them. Even the metaphorical ones. Hell, especially the metaphorical ones.
I don't want to sell anything, buy anything, or process anything as a career. I don't want to sell anything bought or processed, or buy anything sold or processed, or process anything sold, bought, or processed, or repair anything sold, bought, or processed. You know, as a career, I don't want to do that. So my father's in the Army. He wants me to join, but I can't work for that corporation. So what I've been doing lately is kickboxing.